So, Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much for your time today. You've been the ambassador of Georgia to the U.S., based in D.C. for almost 2 years. So we're coming up to the December 2016 start point for 2-year anniversary. You've got a long, distinguished career. Thank you so much for your service to the country of Georgia and also your time here in the United States. You've been involved in all sorts of other types of diplomatic positioning, including in Serbia. You've been in Finland. You've been at the UN. You've had distinguished posts all throughout your career. You originally graduated from Tbilisi State University with International Economic Relations and International Law. So the good news about that is that you've got just a rich, not just diplomatic, but also a sensibility around business in Georgia and international business. And so we really appreciate you taking the time today to talk more about some of the opportunities for U.S. companies and other companies around the world in Georgia. There's a lot happening, a lot of infrastructure, a lot of products coming from Georgia. The consumer market is growing, and so we look forward to learning more about those opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for holding this interesting gathering and giving me the opportunity to talk about Georgia, which is a small country of 3.8 million, but still there is something very interesting about Georgia that makes our bilateral relationships with the United States at the level of strategic partnership. As last week during visiting Tbilisi, the Ambassador Bolton, the National Security Advisor, has mentioned that Georgia is a strong ally of the United States. So it has its reasons how throughout the last 3 decades this relationship advanced at the level at this level. And I won't go into many political, defense, security, military, and other cooperation fields, which keeps our relationship very strong and stable and ever growing. But let me talk more about the potential and possibilities on trade and economic relations and the interest that the United States, we believe, has and should have, rightfully so, should have with Georgia. So Georgia has 3 kind of issues that I wanted to mention that we believe grows the interest towards the country. Location, and location, which is only 1 out of these 3. Still, we are located on the crossroads of the major Eurasian economies with the easiest, fastest, and hopefully with the developed infrastructure, the most convenient and affordable connectivity of the growing Eurasian markets like Central Asia, European Union, China, Turkey. We are ourselves investing a lot, but also we see the interest coming from other big powers around Georgia in investing in infrastructure, as they also see this corridor as a potential for the future connectivity and exchange of goods. Georgia's location has always been its headache. Throughout the years, there has always been an interest of the big powers to have their stronger presence in Georgia. This is what we see even today. But also we see the growing interest of the United States in our partnership with, in our bilateral partnership, which is due to the existing very strong bond that these 2 countries have. So this brings me to the second point, which is that Georgia is a most loyal and reliable partner of the United States in that part of the world, which is full of challenges, full of threats, but still we have managed to maintain our strategic partnership and deepen it in many directions. This has brought a political stability in Georgia and the democratic development in Georgia, and of course the economic reforms that many describe as really strongly standing out in not only in the region but in the wider region, including Eastern Europe, including Middle East. We have advanced as a country with not very rich and good legacy of the Soviet Union. We have managed to become one of the top reformers, to have one of the least burdened countries by taxes, to have one of the easiest places to do business, and etc., etc. So I hope that due to the interest, I will have more possibility to talk about it. So this all serves as a, let's say, good background for interest coming from the U.S. companies. Today we have, last week also, the NSA Bolton had a meeting with AmCham in Georgia, which is includes more than 200 U.S. companies that are active now. But we believe, as I said, to having more room there, as Georgia is on the one hand the gateway to the 8 landlocked countries, including Caucasus, Central Asia, as I said, being located to the main crossroad of the Eurasian continent, and also giving a new potential to the exposure of the growing Central Asian market to the European Union. Also, Georgia is a country which is in a unique position of having the free trade agreement with European Union, DCFTA, Deep and Comprehensive Free Trade Agreement, with China, with all CIS countries, including Russia, with Turkey, with now negotiating with Japan, Israel, and India. And with all that, you are not looking at a country of consumers market 3.8 million population, but a really larger zoom out view of Georgia and the region would give you a clear understanding of what the country represents, which has a, as I said, very good record of the reforms, which we believe is the most important part of what makes Georgia attractive for the businesses, which is the rule of law record. I will be happy to talk about it even more, which is business friendly environment and government, and very easy to do business. So with all that, we try to advance our relationship. We have had this year we are having so far 5.6% economic growth. This is twice as large as our main trade partners and neighbors, but still it is not what Georgia may need. We probably would be happy with double-digit growth, but now with the new Prime Minister who entered office this summer, we are looking for some big reforms on taxation, for example, and which would include as I said, we are 9th least burdened countries by taxes, but we will introduce the no tax policy for the personal income for the major corporations that would establish their regional offices in Georgia. That may, we believe, attract even more attention to Georgia. On the rule of law side, we are on the way of fourth way of judicial reform, but probably the most interesting and attractive changes that we expect now is that we will introduce the international arbitration in Georgia that will have its Paris office's branch in Tbilisi. So we believe that this will send a very good and strong signal to the companies of what Georgia will represent by itself. I'm also happy to say that I'm here with my deputy, Georgi Tsikolia, with our diplomat Mariam Tarasashvili, the team who works in the embassy on the issues, but also the extensive background of our deputy chief of mission, of being CEO of Enterprise Georgia, and some other achievements in his career will give him even more in-depth knowledge of the developments that I may not be in a position to cover. So with that, I will end and let the questions or interests. I will be happy to respond and answer.
Okay, that sounds good. We do have some questions coming in, and so either Elshin or Brenda, after we have some of these questions, if you want to corral some of the questions there in the room. I'd like to thank, while we're at it, the Maryland Department of Commerce for hosting the event there in Baltimore, and also apologize to the attendees and also to everybody in the room for the our technology glitches. So I'm very glad that we're up and running, and here we go with the questions. One of the questions, this sounds like a person of the world, someone who is very familiar with the wine industry of Georgia. So, and what this person is asking is that the country of Georgia has a very famous wine industry. Could you talk more about that? And are there certainly opportunities for U.S. People to drink the wine, but are there any business opportunities related to that? And how do you see that industry growing in the future?
Thank you. Yeah, it's fair to start with the wine question because we are the birthplace of the winemaking. The last autumn, the archaeological findings have proved that 8,000 years ago, Georgians have started to, well, Georgians or whoever would live on the place which is now called Georgia, have started to produce wine. That's the earliest date that has been so far, found. The French have acknowledged Georgia as a birthplace of winemaking, which speaks a lot about this fact. So Georgian wine has its beautiful story, but it has its uniqueness, which is a different way of winemaking, which is recognized by UNESCO as intangible cultural heritage of humanity. And it also has 1/5 of indigenous vine types and grape types that are grow in Georgia. So that all describes a small story of Georgian wine, which have started to establish itself very strongly in the wine market. I think it's the 5th largest product that we import in the United States, but the business-wise, it has a huge potential in Georgia, especially when we talk about the small wineries, and developing kind of a wine routes and tourism destinations in Georgia. As over the past 12 years, the Georgian tourism has developed, and the number of visitors over the past 12 years increased 12 times, from 600,000 in 2006 to 8.4 million is expected in 2008. And this has it's really objective reasons, which is a good winemaking country with wonderful wine, very nice and diverse cuisine because of its location, which has been a source of attracting the different cultures to Georgia, which has a very unique nature, as it has 13 microclimate types on the very small 30,000 square mile piece of land, and with the variety of that starts from the small deserts and ends with the mountains where snow never melts, with the beautiful seashore, etc. So This all is kind of a brand, the new brand of Georgia that is attracting more and more people. And in this regard, we hope to have next year direct flights from New York, which we don't have, and we are really looking forward to it as it will advance our bilateral relationship. So yes, it has a huge potential, and next week, starting from October 11, then October 12 and October 13th, you can see the announcement on the Facebook page of the Embassy of Georgia. There will be a conference, wine tasting, and other events related to Georgian wine. The conference name is itself very interesting, the Wine and Geopolitics. So the Georgia being located where it is, it has contributed not only wine to the geopolitics, but its own history and its own story. So I think it will be a very interesting discussion that will be held at CSIS in Washington, but also other events related to this Rvino. Rvino is Georgian name for that festival.
Very good. Did you say that you're hoping to have a direct flight to the U.S. from Georgia?
We hope, yes, we hope.
Okay, where do you know where the likely occurrence would be? Out of New York, maybe?
Yes, most probably out of New York. The thing is that a couple of American companies are doing their feasibility studies. The government is looking very favorably to support the initial direct flights at the first stage of this activity. And I know that some other third country, to say that, companies are also looking into using Tbilisi as a hub for the air connectivity, and including New York as one of the destinations. The destinations that you look at connecting New York with other capitals around Georgia, it's on half or two-thirds filled with the citizens that then are taking the connecting flights and getting to Tbilisi. So we believe that there is a good business wise as well, smart move to have a direct flight at least twice a week. So we really hope to have that next year.
That sounds good. The history of Georgia is that it has been relatively difficult to do business, but that's changed in the last 10 to 15 years. The data that at least we have is that Georgia was ranked 112th in ease of business in 2005 and number 9 in the world in 2015. So outstanding progress. What's happening in the country to drive such an improvement?
Yes, tomorrow there will be a new announcement by the World Bank, and today we are number 9th, and tomorrow we will improve that position. I'm not allowed to say more, but but I hope we will improve that position tomorrow. So yes, we are putting a lot of efforts, because you need to probably one needs to have a 1 hour, 2 hour, even not enough in-depth analysis of situation in Georgia, and then you can just easily say we are number 9th by the World Bank on easy to do business, and that kind of concludes a lot of things. But what goes on in Georgia is that we have on the registration of business, for example, we are number 1 in the world. It's the easiest way to register and start your business. You apply with a very simple, I think, 2 papers requested to apply, and you don't even get the permission. You don't need to get a permission. After 24 hours, if there is no objection coming, you just start your business. It's as easy as this. But also in Georgia, we have since it was announced as UN's one of the good initiatives of the year, we have innovation of the year. We have started the public service hall, where citizens of Georgia get 500 plus services at the same place, at the same under this one roof. Now we are starting the the service government concept, where all the services that government provides for the private sector will be also in the same space and same digital space, and that will even advance our positioning more. And we are putting a lot of efforts in securing these services through blockchain technology. Georgia is one of the first country to use in the public services the blockchain technology, as we are also one of the leaders of that technology in the world through cryptocurrency production. We are number 3 after China and United States, or after United States and China, which brings us back to the how does it happen? It happens through the energy not efficiency, but the energy prices that Georgia has, and therefore that has attracted investments from the United States and China to Georgia to produce cryptocurrency, and hence create more the blockchain technology in Georgia. And this is the potential of Georgia's electricity is even higher. We only consume 25% of our hydropower energy potential, and that attracts the most investments in the country. If you look at the chart, the hydropower plants and production of electricity, which we are on the verge of seasonally importing and seasonally exporting, and we have high voltage transmission line with Turkey with good connectivity with European Union. We can easily sell or buy the electricity. So,
very good. You touched on infrastructure, the Chinese, and you touched on China, the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative. Is that touching Georgia, and from your perspective, how do you see that evolving?
We see the very much increased interest in FDI, in export-import, and in the interest towards infrastructural projects. It's not as significant. We have not mortgaged our future, to put it simply, but we definitely see that interest that is coming from China, because if you look at the routes connecting China and Europe, China and Turkey, which has a big growing potential in the coming years. Georgia is the fastest, the simplest, and hopefully, as I said, with the coming infrastructural projects, the most affordable route to connect these markets. The largest strategic project that is building, that has started to build its first phase of is Anaglia deep sea port, that is on the Black Sea. That would include, that would have the U.S. investments, the U.S. investment from the major IFIs, and some Central Asian investors. So it has attracted already a big interest, and we believe that when finished, it will attract and redirect some routes, but also will attract the increased connectivity potential, both from China and to China as well. So it's kind of part of the generally concept of the Belt and Road, but not in the sense of the heavy investments in infrastructure. We ourselves doubled our infrastructural projects for the coming 3 years, and we will have all major infrastructural projects, the highways, 90 bridges, 40 tunnels, and 1,000 kilometers of highways finished by 2021 with our own budget, which we believe will put us in a more favorable position.
Okay. For companies that are out here now and they haven't been able to touch these projects yet, what would your recommendation be in terms of getting involved? Who do they approach? How does it happen? let's start with the infrastructure side of things. Where does a company from the U.S. or anywhere go first in terms of understanding what the potentials are and getting involved?
Let me just give you two websites, which I think today is probably the most important one. One is spa.gov.ge, spa.gov.g, and the other is build.gov.g. On these sites, you should find more information about the upcoming projects and possible tenders with regards to infrastructural projects in Georgia, but also the simplest and easiest ways to use the embassy website and connect with our team, and we will be more than happy to go into the details with every single direction that one may have.
Okay. Building on that question is a question from, I'm not sure where this is coming from, but from William. How open is Georgia to tenders applications from overseas companies for these infrastructure projects and other projects in Georgia? And what percentage are allowed for foreign investors invested in joint venture companies in Georgia? Are there regulations around that and doing business there?
Generally, one of the favorable position that we find ourselves is due to as low regulations as one can get. We are therefore, if I'm mistaken, Georgi will have more on that. There are no regulations with regards to the ownership share. And what was the first question?
Any other restrictions regarding companies coming in and doing work there? So they're not required to do any kind of a joint venture or having any percentage of local ownership, it sounds like.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So that goes to the ease of business in doing business there. Where do you see some of the growth opportunities in the future? Historically, chemicals, plastics, construction materials, apparel and textiles, ceramic products, furniture, these are some of the industries that Georgia is known for. When you look out 5, 10, 15, 20 years, you mentioned blockchain technology and other things like that. Where do you see some of the best opportunities?
Definitely IT, which is probably the most growing and having the most potential to grow in Georgia. Of course, as I said, it's energy and hydropower production, hydropower plants and electricity production, which is already today around 50% cheaper to produce the same energy in Georgia rather than comparing with Turkey, for example. That is hospitality, which, as I said, after 12 years is still growing with 25-28% annually, the number of visitors. And also the number of spendings per person is increasing. So when we had a lot of visitors from the Eastern Europe, backpackers, hitchhikers, etc. Now this, so to say, the trend is shifting. We are more of a destination for the different kind of tours like wine tours or cuisine tours, etc. So hospitality for sure, and I would say manufacturing. We are a lot of sports brands like Puma or others are Adidas, Nike, many like Nine, Moncler, etc. are producing in Georgia, manufacturing in Georgia, and we are having a really let's say in line with the major international labor organizations requirements, and therefore it's very comfortable for the large brands to produce in Georgia without any hesitation.
Oh, that sounds good. I have one more question, and then I'm going to turn it over to our advisory board there, led by Brenda, and I know Elshin, you're playing a role there in today's meeting. And so the question here, before I turn it over to you, is the relationship with both Russia and China versus the U.S. How does Georgia play that strategic game, and then how should U.S. companies view kind of the history and the future between these three countries?
Yes. Well, Georgia is on the crossroad, but Georgia is not a between lane. Georgia is a Europe. Georgia's it's not a choice of one government or another in Georgia. It's a civilizational choice. Georgian, our mindset is European, our values are European, and so basically this is Europe, and therefore what we do is we just catch up on the years and decades that we have lost under the Soviet Union to the best practices in the European Union, and this is what we do through association agreement that we have, through deep and comprehensive free trade area, to bring daily with every amendment we do in legislation or every new presented law, to bring more Europe and European standards in Georgia, and therefore this is not a geopolitical question about Georgia. Although Georgia is a free economy, which means that there is investments coming from Russia or China, Turkey definitely, but we have our strong belief that there is more to be done, and this is what has been discussed over the past year and a half, since I am more than a year and a half, since I am here to advance the U.S. interest towards the region through not only defense and security, really impeccable relationship, but also through the more trade and economic relations. And despite the less enthusiasm to the trade deals that this administration has, we believe that there is more and more to benefit from the agreements and relationships with the country like Georgia, which is one, sending to everyone the message how the allies should be awarded. The second is to containing some threats, and we understand the importance of stability of Georgia, or generally region threats that come from the triangle, which includes Russia, which includes Iran, to balance the growing interest of China. So for all this, we believe that United States has a interest, and we believe that we can find this interest with this administration, which has a strong support from the Congress. This idea of increasing our trade relationships through agreements has idea of, and you could mention, I'm not naming it free trade agreement, but definitely it will be a very fast process with Georgia, and it will be as a fair deal as one can get. So therefore we have a strong support from Congress. There are many things that are controversial in DC, but Georgia is not among them. There is a very strong bipartisan support in the Congress when it comes to Georgia. There is a strong support from the high-level administration officials, from the State Department, although we understand USTR having a lot at hand this time. But we believe that we will advance this relationship, and we will have a stronger presence of the U.S. In the region through Georgia.
Well, that sounds good. I'd like to now turn it back to the room there, and I apologize, I'm not sure what you guys worked out in terms of how you're doing the question, but Brenda and Elshin, what questions do you have there in the room?
I would recommend that anybody has a question come and sit here to ask the question. So I'll start by just asking, you mentioned wine and culinary experiences. What other tourist experiences would attract visitors to Georgia?
Sure. So about tourism, of course, culinary wine, it's beautiful, but Georgia, as I said, has 13 microclimate zones. That's We have mountains where snow never melts. We have very good skiing resorts. In Europe, the only place where you can heli ski is Georgia. In Europe, we will host in 2021 the World Championship on snowboarding, and we will bid on hosting the Winter Olympics in 2030. And we are very serious about it. We have already started a year and a half ago preparation for that, and we are in a long-term kind of thinking and preparing process for that. So we'll see. We are hopeful, but also there are historic places. There are Georgia has a lot of unique things, starting with the 5th century churches. Georgia has become Christian country in the year 337. So we have 5th century churches in Georgia. We have unique alphabet. There are 14 unique alphabets in the world, and one of the still living alphabets are in Georgia. Georgia has a unique literature, poetry. The 5th century poem from Georgia talks about the religious liberties and family kind of family problems of the wife and husband. So it's a really unique literature that was the host of Frankfurt, the largest in the world, Frankfurt Book Fair, just a month ago. And so there are many beautiful places for hiking, for biking, but also for alpinism. I think it's a correct word for that. And Tbilisi itself, it has become the capital of Georgia. It has become, as they describe in the international editions, the new Berlin of Europe, with electronic music centers where all the major DJs are not missing the opportunity to perform, which apparently is a really interesting, attractive, and there are 3 or 4 the clubs that are in the top 10 of the European scale are in Tbilisi. So yeah, there are many interesting things. The new, of course, business-wise, the hospitality is a very interesting one. There are no rooms empty or no beds empty in Georgia, and the building of new hotels still continue. One of the new brands in Georgia that is very unique, the Rooms Hotel. You can read about it everywhere, starting from New York Times and ending with Vogue. Is a new wonderful concept that is now building its 5th hotel already in New York. So this is a kind of, we have found our place in a design, in the world of design as well. So it's a nice place. It's a good place to visit, and it has a huge potential, as I said, still growing.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Andrew Kreinick from the Maryland Department of Commerce. I have a question about the startup environment for businesses and what kind of entrepreneurial support you have for the businesses.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me refer to my deputy who will definitely give more.
Yeah.
Whatever you prefer. I mean,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hi.
Will you come?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry for that. He will.
It went all the way around the world, I think, there.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hello.
Ambassador always likes me put me on a spot when there is a tough question this coming up. After he's so eloquently for the past 40 minutes has been speaking about everything that the Georgia has to present, now I have to find in my mind something that would be equally as interesting or close to that. So Entrepreneurship. First of all, why would I mean, based on experience, would be able to answer that question is in my previous job, in my previous capacity, I was involved with the government in development of the overall ecosystem in Georgia, development of the support mechanisms that will allow entrepreneurs to become the part of that development. And I can probably say that today the situation in Georgia allows a lot of young, uh, not so young, from different industries, different ideas, entrepreneurs to find opportunities and find tools that will enable them to move forward with their ideas. Would be it's in the field of the education where they will need specific infrastructure, specific training, specific skill sets, specific advice. There are tools for that through the state or the private initiatives that are available. Would be it's financing opportunities where, again, to the initiatives that are mixed in the public and the private sector initiatives, there is a start of financing that are available, there are grants that are available, innovation grants, etc., etc. And third is via education tools and an overall reform in the education system that specifically touches the STEM field and the field of technology and allows our younger generation to become the part of the overall educational global process via different institutions, among them the U.S. educational institutions that have representation in Georgia. The one example of that would be San Diego State University that has a campus in Tbilisi and offers an undergraduate study. It's a similar type of diploma that they would offer in San Diego to any student that is enrolled in programs in their main campus.
Well, that sounds good. Could you introduce yourself, your name, your title, and what your involvement is?
My name is Georgi Tsikolia, and I'm Deputy Chief of Mission at the Embassy of Georgia.
Okay, very good. So you're based in Washington, D.C.
Yes, I am. Yes.
So the
We
concept,
have such a beautiful view from our office, so maybe we can switch at least a day in a month. You guys can come to DC and we'll come to. You'll
so
enjoy
you're thinking about relocating the embassy to Inner Harbor, Baltimore. Is that what you're saying?
Nowadays, relocating the embassies is in favor, so you never know.
Well, the fact that Georgia is so advanced on starting up with new businesses, entrepreneurialism, what you just addressed, must be a high priority both for the government and maybe it's also, is it a part of the makeup of Georgian people to be, rapidly jumping into new opportunities? I mean, is that part of the culture there? Some cultures are more or less inclined. It sounds like Georgia is more inclined.
Well, I'll just go back to the meeting that we had like an hour ago with your colleagues in Baltimore, and there was one of the colleagues asked a similar question, and I referred to one of my favorite books, The Startup Nation. Probably a lot of you have read that. The Startup Nation describes Israel as a new startup nation, and describes a certain kind of a inner feeling or inner strength that the Israelis have called chutzah, that allows them to become entrepreneurial in their mind, and describes how the ecosystem in Israel was developed. And I was kind of connecting them to a lot of that's taking place in Georgia, and a lot of similarities in terms of the market, in terms of the constraints, in terms of the challenges that the local entrepreneurs in Georgia face now, what was, let's say, 20, 25 years ago in Israel and in similar places. We'll take Ireland, for example. We'll take Estonia, for example. So a number of the other countries that have a similar size in terms of the country, geographic location. There is a connection of different kind of crossing points and geopolitical challenges. I think Georgians, based on the history that we have and the culture, and as Ambassador mentioned, historically, we've been at the crossing points of different political, economic, and cultural interests, and that was the interest of the strengths that the nation has kind of built in their DNA. And one of those strengths is being open to different challenges and the different environments. And that openness allows Georgians to be ambitious in pursuing a number of their goals and ideas. So we think that once the tools that are available and those tools become intertwined with an overall ecosystem that exists in the country, then and once we will have one successful experience of the Georgian company, as let's say with Skype took place in Estonia, or in Israel it was ICQ that was sold for $500 million back in the day. Same type of an experience that will be in one successful experience in Georgia. I think the overall development of that industry will skyrocket in a quite quick manner.
And undoubtedly, having a rich wine culture and drinking wine helps entrepreneurialism and open-mindedness.
That's our secret weapon. So
in a creativity way.
Yes.
I'm sure. Any other questions there?
Yes, we have one more.
Hello, I'm Leanne Young, and I work for Prometric. And I had a question about professional credentialing and testing of professions. In Georgia right now, if you're in a particular, like in the energy field or something like that, are you required to take a professional exam to serve it? Is that something that's being done yet in Georgia, as far as like taking a test?
You mean the labor force?
Or like a profession, say for example you're an engineer
Yes.
or a healthcare provider, you have to take a test to certify that you're in that particular field. And I was just wondering about that. Is that something that's very common now or not?
I think it depends on the which sphere are we talking about, and because in many ways, including now in the hospitality, there are the vocational services that include all these new practices to be fully adopted, and therefore that kind of gives the skills for the service person, or definitely when we talk about the energy or infrastructure, etc. This is the larger kind of segment which has a strong history in Georgia with education-wise. What we have been lacking, and something that has inspired, I think, every prime minister to put in Georgia to put its efforts to advance in education is that we have been the country in the Soviet Union which probably still has a huge legacy in education of the Soviet legacy, to have, I don't know, probably 80-85% of the higher education in the country, which of course by itself is a constraint for the economic development when you need a labor force. So the changing this social stereotypes about the vocational education and somehow giving the possibility of people and explaining that in 40% of cases with a higher education you may not find a job, and with almost certainly 80-90% of cases you will find a job with the vocational education, can somehow with time hopefully shift this narrative, this mindset, which definitely needs its efforts. And as Georgi said, we are putting a lot of emphasis in education and in providing a good and strong workforce in that regard. But definitely, as being the part of the signatory of the association agreement, we are required to advance our standards at the labor legislation, including the requirements of the workforce to be at the level necessary for the one job or another.
Yeah. I'll just add the sentence that, I mean, the principle that Adam Smith described of the invincible hand of the market, it's something that in Georgia for the past 20 years has been a main principle behind the economic development. So in terms of certifying or requirement of the certain set of skills in passing an exams in order to become the part of the certain industry, there is a strong opinion that this is not something that allows the industry to develop in the right way. So the openness in the market entry and ability for a lot of people to kind of become the part of the industry and an ability of the market to regulate the quality of the services that are provided by the certain individuals or the companies are the best way to answer the requirements that the consumers have.
Okay. Interesting. Thank you.
Sure.
Does anyone else have a question? If you want to ask something, please. You want to? Yeah.
Oh, no, I just want to add that I really need help on the buying, because I know that in the Georgia you have a crude oil and copper, right?
Oil and
And
Crude
copper.
oil and copper.
Copper and oil.
I don't think about the crude oil, but the copper, yes, is one of our export productions. Probably the largest that we have, together with the ferroalloy. We are not rich, fortunately, with oil or gas, because that has forced us to develop some other resources like human, etc. But definitely that is something that Georgia produces, the copper and ferroalloy, which is exported. Was there a question how to connect
Yeah,
with
because-
people who are
Yes, exactly, because,
exporting?
I'm doing a global trade, and I have several people asking me, because in Asia,
Sure,
to asking for the
copper. Yeah.
and oil.
Okay.
So-
We can exchange the cards and
Yes, thank you.
yeah.
They have to buy it, but they need to be open the LC. They have to be open the LC,
Okay.
letter of credit.
I am not very specifically knowledgeable about
Thank
that,
you.
but we will
That's all.
provide that due to your request. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Very, very good. I think we're going to have to break. I think you can have additional questions in the room after we end the Globinar. Did you want to say something, Brenda?
I was just gonna say, we had one more question for the group, and then we can wind up.
Okay, why don't we do one more question? Sure.
Sure, go ahead.
My name is Dan Silverstein. I'm a private sector and capital markets advisor. This has been a wonderful summary. Thank you so much. Eloquent
very
and,
much.
and
Thank you very much.
cogent and logical. I'm particularly impressed with your reference to Adam Smith's invisible hand.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. My takeaway from much of what you said is that Georgia leads in the field of in the process of becoming an enabling environment for industry to flourish. You talked, Ambassador, about rule of law a number of times and made additional references. I did a quick survey online while you were talking, although I was listening to every word. And I see a number of universities that look to be excellent, but only one law school. So I have a two-part question that are correlated. One law school, and I also found one agriculture or maybe two agriculture universities. And my question is that enough?
Yes, well, probably, maybe not, but definitely these two universities that you named are really, really one of the leading ones. That was the point of investing more in education. Now we have one sovereign fund that is trying to attract some programs from the Munich Technological University, from Virginia Tech to Kutaisi, the second largest city, and build a campus for 60,000 students, and kind of technological university with programs from other leading universities. Sometimes we feel that not only it's enough, but it's a lot. But given the attraction that Georgia has due to different factors, but also in the sphere of education, we are getting more and more interest from the region for the students to come and study in Georgia. So one of the points of the San Diego State University was also attracting other countries from Central Asia from Pakistan, from India, who come and get the good quality education in Georgia. So it really has a potential of becoming a hub for the education as well, regionally. And this is something that we put our efforts to.
Great, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. Round of applause. Yes, please. I think there's several things that we've taken away from this, and certainly from Global Chamber's perspective, the priority of getting the country of Georgia into the Global Chamber in a chapter is a critical one, and it's one that we've bumped up to the top of our priority list. So we look forward to working with you and your team. We'd like to thank Mariam Tarasashvili, who has been our main conduit to setting this up. So thank you, Mariam, for all of your help. Thanks to the Maryland Department of Commerce. We saw Andrew and Signet, I think, is there, and others. Thank you all for your help in putting this event on and supporting us. Thank you to Brenda. Thank you to Leanne. Thank you to Larry and the advisory board there for Global Chamber Baltimore, Washington, for all the things that you do and your support on this event. And thank you to everybody who has attended. Our next event is actually next week, and it's, I believe, and it's about sales. So if anybody is interested in improving their sales capabilities, we have the CRM company ACT. Is the CEO of ACT is going to be talking about leveraging the clients and the customers that you have to increase your sales around the world. And one of the takeaways certainly for today is that Georgia is doing a great job of that, selling its products overseas and also selling its country, and also doing a great job of making it an easy place to do business. Thank you, Ambassador. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate this opportunity. We really enjoyed this experience and looking forward to working with you very closely. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Take care, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye.